Hello and welcome to the Enterprise Talk Conversation Series, a peer knowledge resource by the CXOs for the CXOs. Now to our host, Kanika Goswami.
Hi, we welcome you to our podcast On Stage with Enterprise Thought Leaders. My name is Kanika and I'm the managing editor of On Media's B2B enterprise technology publications. We have engaging conversations mostly with technocrats and thought leaders and industry experts, and they reach over 1.3 million business leaders worldwide. Today is going to be slightly different. We are talking to a serial entrepreneur in the field of AdTech. A little more about it. So people are the most important assets in advertising, and their needs are ever evolving. So why do so many agencies and holding companies overwork, hold back, and mistreat their employees? Ad veteran and serial entrepreneur Tim Ringel, he's a global CEO of Meet the People, is out to change all of this. Tim is a co-founder of Meet the People, the world's first people-centric agency group. It's a company with a mission to create a better work-life balance in the industry and politically motivated promotions and glass ceilings in the business, and bring in unflagging commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This it sounds really too good to be true, Tim, but I'm sure you're doing a great job at it. A little about Tim before we continue. As I said, he's a serial entrepreneur with a passion and advice to push past the status quo. His ambition and desire to make things work the way they're supposed to has led him to the role of global CEO of Next Generation International Advertising Group, Meet the People. A builder of multiple international agency groups, Tim is a seasoned global CEO and executive in the marketing space, having run world-renowned Spring Studios and Reprise Digital, IPG Media Brands Digital Global Agency Network. With experiences in EMEA, APAC, LATAM, and the US, Tim has operationally managed ad businesses with more than 3,000 staff and 68 offices across the globe. He's been a speaker at 250 plus industry events, including talks at the United Nations, Cannes Lion, Google, and Facebook, and he's an active supporter of entrepreneurial associations and charities. That's quite a bit and very, very far away from the techno people that I'm usually associated with. Would you like to tell us something about Meet the People before we start with the questions?
Yeah, I think number one, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure, especially to talk to folks who are not necessarily only in the advertising industry, because somehow I slipped into this industry not really all about. And I mentioned before to you, I think where we can build the bridge is really, I'm at heart, I'm a technologist as well, because I taught myself coding when I was at the age of 11, because I really wanted a Commodore C64, and my parents gifted me a PC, and I had 2 hours a day to do something with the personal computer that nobody had in the early 80s, right? And so I had to teach myself coding. So I actually wanted to be an entrepreneur who built platforms and, all those kind of things. But I ended up slipping into the advertising industry and kind of got stuck there for 30 years, building in total 5 companies now. This is my 5th company I'm building. So Meet the People, as I've been in the advertising industry at large, starting in Europe, building internationally into Asia as well, and Middle East, and then eventually coming to the US 9 years ago and starting here again. I've across those 5 businesses, I've seen certain consistent problems in the industry, and the biggest problems were usually that even though advertising agency groups specifically, are extremely reliant on people, they didn't really cherish those people enough. My industry very much lives from how people come up with creative ideas, how they identify themselves with the clients, the brands, the business needs of a company to then help across multiple trades to make those companies more successful. Ultimately, the job of my companies has always been to position a brand and then eventually sell more product. But the best way to do that is really to understand the business. And I felt that it became extremely transactional. The bigger the companies, let's talk WPP, Publicis, the least connected to the actual business they were trying to help they were, because people weren't incentivized to really give it their best. They were incentivized to, and that is primarily because these large groups are listed in the stock exchanges, so they have quarterly targets they have to hit. They were primarily focused on financial engineering rather than actually solving problems. So I started Meet the People, number one, because I really wanted to build a wholesome advertising group that can do everything from A to Z within the value chain. Number two, I just wanted my mantra is, if we can just be 10-20% better than the competition in how we treat our people, then we're already going to really move the needle, and we're going to be one of the best employers in the field. And we started with 2 people in New York City, and today we are 750, 800 people. And that's 3 years and 11 months ago. So it's been quite rapid, and we're growing. We're outgrowing the market in terms of organic growth. We are still acquiring businesses to add to our growth. Right now, I'm very focused on North America, purely because of the scale of the market. I think starting mid 26, we're going to probably internationalize further. Yeah.
That's really great to know. Very Jerry Maguire-ish, but interesting. So my
Yeah.
first question was, I think, probably answered in your introduction. What are your views on the business of advertising today as a serial entrepreneur, startup investor, and industry veteran? 30 years,
Yeah.
you would have a lot of views.
Yes, I've seen a lot, obviously. And I remember I started my first business when I was just turning 21, right? And I was extremely green, as they say, and didn't know anything about business. So you get very hyper about everything that happens. And what I learned over 30 years in the industry, I learned very quickly that there's always something that's disrupting my industry. Today it's AI. Yesterday it was blockchain. And before that it was something else. So I don't really get out of bed being super hyper anymore when things happen, but we have to be realistic that the industry is changing, because technology has been disrupting our industry, my industry specifically, for the last 15, 20 years, primarily on the back of Google, then Facebook, TikTok, whatever platform came and conquered, and Amazon most recently became one of the biggest players in the advertising space. Never really monetized advertising, but now billions and billions of dollars of revenue, 70, $80 billion of revenue from advertising. So there's always been disruption. So I don't really get too hyper about it anymore, but we have to be realistic that it changes the way how people have to work, and it changes the expectation of our clients, because the expectations of consumers changes, right? So I think the biggest shift we ever saw was when a website was nice to have, from if the website wasn't there anymore, customers wouldn't buy, because and it triggered that customers had an expectation that a brand had to be available 24/7, right? And that wasn't normal, let's say 15, 20 years ago, and that changed everything. The entire move into the internet. And now we're going into an era, I would say, where that expectation even gets more extreme, where if your AI doesn't answer any question instantaneously, even though people might not work in the middle of the night, you're going to lose that sale, you're going to lose that engagement with the consumer. So it's always been the same to an extent, but we had different applications, how technology disrupted the space, and how we had to adjust towards consumer expectations. That's how I would describe it.
I mean, talking of disruptions, and if you're looking at like 3 decades, and even the use of computers was a disruption at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I started as a journalist when we had typesetting. Desktop production hadn't started. So yeah, disrupt. And that's the way of every business. So you were talking about AI. So how are you integrating AI into your day-to-day operations to make your business smarter, more efficient, more cost-effective? And also, kind of a sensitive question, how is it impacting your human resources situation?
Yeah, of course. It's a super fair question. I think the question should be, how do we not adopt AI into our organization? Because we have to. And I don't know, understandably so, if you're a very large corporation with 100,000 employees, you fear those changes. You fear that, oh no, another problem I have to deal with. If you are a startup like we are, yes, we have 750, 800 people, but we're still a startup. We are very young. We're very entrepreneurial. I cherish those moments. Why? Because it gives me so much opportunity to build an even better business. Because you don't start with legacy. I don't start with legacy on tech infrastructure. I don't start with legacy on real estate. I basically build it. We build the plane as it flies, right? So I cherish those opportunities. So we have multiple layers where we're adopting AI within our organization. We adopt it when it comes to operational efficiency. That's basically the OS, the operating system of our business. You don't need a lot of heavy lift paperwork anymore, because lots of research, lots of boring, repetitive work can be leveraged now. I can be leveraged to make this less boring. Yes, you ultimately need less people, but I don't have to, change people because of it, because we're still growing very fast. So I'm just hiring differently, right? So that's the base layer of how you operate your business, and every business is going to go through that, where you change your operating system. The next layer is, how do you enhance your product with AI, but it's not necessarily visible to the customers yet, right? That's the second layer. So how does AI make us better in what we produce for clients, no matter if it's on the creative side, if it's on the media side, if it's on the experiential side of our business? And the third one is, what proprietary AI tools are we building that really differentiate us to our competition? So we are trying to tackle all three of those layers, make our business better in terms of platform OS, then enhance how we deliver products, and then build products specifically to use AI in a way where it hasn't, from my point of view, haven't been used in our industry, to allow clients to be more efficient, smarter, price differently, or simply be much more in tune with what consumers are looking for.
So this is just a question out of curiosity. Do you think you
Sure.
compromise on creativity if you're using AI tools for?
Yes and no. So I think how I like to explain it is, I always gonna have humans touch any creative work. It has to be, because if we're really honest about it, I'm in the business of selling intellectual property. When we work for clients like Google, IBM, LVMH. If these clients hire us, not hiring us to press buttons. They're hiring us to come up with brilliant ideas that are different to the ideas of others, their competitors. And I can't sell this idea or intellectual property if it hasn't been touched by a human. It would be unethical to sell it, right? Because we don't own it. It is owned by OpenAI, it's owned by Anthropic, or it's owned by Mistral, right? Or Perplexity. So I have to have a human touch on it. But I think the role of a creative is going to change from being a specialist into being an architect of a creative idea, right? And that means that you still sit at home at your living room table, you drink your tea, and you think about, how could this brand differentiate itself? And then you use AI to figure out what ideas we want to present to the client. But the architect of the idea, because AI isn't emotional, how can something unemotional create an emotion with a human being ultimately, right? Because AI hasn't suffered the way how we have suffered, or had joy how we had joy, or have looked at their children and said, wow, this is something that touches my heart. So how can AI replicate the heart, the soul? So we always need a human to architect the idea, but we can use AI to visualize it. That's not going to be the challenge anymore, right? Visualization is going to be way more efficient, way easier. So I would say, if you're a graphic designer as a trade, you're going to have a problem. But if you can progress into being an architect of a creative idea, combining strategy, understanding the product, understanding the brand, and have the skill to challenge how it should be executed, and then you utilize AI, you're going to have a brilliant career. The problem is that we're not going to need as many architects as we have graphic designers or copywriters. That is the problem, right? As humanity, we're going to need less specialist creatives. We need more architectural creatives. That means that a lot of people are going to have to readjust what their career path is going to look like. That is the reality of it. But we can't sell a creative idea to a client if we don't own it.
You're also building some AI tools for your own company or for your clients. What third-party tools and platforms have you found the most promising?
So with every AI, so I don't call them AI tools, because again, I'm probably too honest about it, because we're not inventing an AI. We're not creating a small or large language model here, or a Gen AI, because we are just a company. We're not an AI developing company. We use, what I call it is, we have AI enabled tools, meaning we use external AI tools, ideally 5 to 8 of them, to come up with conclusions that then we visualize for our clients in a smarter way and execute against it, right? So we use all kinds of different AI tools. For example, we use AI tools to scrap websites, photograph every page, and then use other AI tools to understand the audience sentiment. What is the demographic? What is the feeling people have when they look at these images, right? We use another AI tool then to do a AI tracking, not AI tracking, an eye tracking analysis of how would a consumer of this age group, of this behavior, of this net worth consume, for example, this banking website, right? And would that person consume the banking website different to a different audience? So we use in each of those tools between 5 to 8 different AI applications, you could say, right? That we haven't invented, because why would we invent something that already exists? But we are aggregating this into something that is meaningful to our clients. So that's what I call AI-enabled tools. I think there's too many companies who pretend to develop AI, when, from my perspective, sadly so, the battleground has already been laid out between 5 to 6 companies in the world, right? And hopefully there's going to be more going to be able to claim. The reality is most of the funding, and now I'm talking as a venture capital investor, not as an advertising entrepreneur, most of those companies have already been heavily funded, and they have too much funding to fail. So that's why my investment structure that I started 20 years ago has consciously invested into OpenAI, into Anthropic, into XAI, everywhere we can get in within the 6 names, because these are going to be the people who are going to dictate what our future with AI is going to look like. And the rest is the application layer that we use every day. But the application layer is not necessarily, as you know, the intelligence behind it. The intelligence is going to come from very few.
So then naturally the next question is going to be about upskilling. So what are some strategies for upskilling your existing team? Of course, you can, when you're hiring new people, you can ask for
Correct.
for capabilities and skills, but your existing team, and you do not want to um, create any kind of issues or challenges for them, so you would upskill them. So what are some strategies to upskill and be more informed when it comes to the complicated and the crowded AI space? How do marketers find the time? How do you find the time and the headspace to balance, your daily workloads, and at the same time stay informed, stay abreast of what's happening in the ad tech industry, whatever new tools are coming up? Uh, the disadvantage of being a veteran in a particular industry is that it's not always easy to keep up with what's happening today, because you know too much of yesterday and the day before. So then the next thing you can do is have internal teams that are keeping track of everything. How do you manage that? How do you do it?
So there's really 2 layers how I do it. I learned very early that I'm never going to be the best at everything, because I'm actually not. I'm actually not really the best coder or the best person to, I don't know, to come up with a great strategy for a client. That's not my skill. There's people who are much better trained and much smarter than me, but my skill is to bring those people into the room at the right moment in time. And that's how I see it with tech development as well. We've created an AI council where around 15% of our population is represented within the council, and each of our business, I have 9 companies within my group. Each of them have dedicated someone to it that can carry the decisions, learnings, initiatives, tasks from the AI council in the individual operation. I trust my AI council basically with everything. They test the tools. They try to understand what fits to creative, what fits to experiential. Because if you look at everything we do between creative, content, experiential, shopper, merchandise, media, traditional media, digital media, performance marketing, data analytics, each of those capabilities we have has to deal with AI and find ways to adopt into AI specifically for their trade. I would be the last person to understand how to do that, if I'm really honest about it. But the specialists within the trades, they know exactly which tools are great. So we're trying to layer it all up or boil it back up into the AI console. And I only have given them very clear instructions what I want. I want training, I want guidance, I want safety, because we deal with proprietary customer data that we can't just upload into AI, right? That's a liability. So I gave them a framework of what I believe we should operate under, and they're executing against it brilliantly. I'm very proud of the team. So I learned as an entrepreneur, as hard as it is, starting at around 60, 70 people, you're going to have to let go. It's the only way how you're going to make it, because until 70 people, I know everybody's friends, pet names, spouses, you walk into the office and you say hi to everybody because you know everybody, you know their history, you hired them. Starting at 70 people, just forget it. There's no way people enter the elevator and ask me if I work in my own company, right? So it's just the reality of it. So you have to start trusting people that they're going to be smarter and better than you yourself. And I take their guidance in how we make those decisions, what tools we're going to adopt. And I can't stay abreast. So that's the first one. The second one is I invest into companies. So I force myself, because I believe AI is going to be probably the biggest disruption since the internet, if not bigger, because it touches everything again, right? I force myself to invest into AI companies because I believe it's the only way how I'm going to stay informed and how I'm going to stay relevant in the space as an entrepreneur as well. So that's the two layers how I expose myself as much as possible. And then I use it, of course, myself as much as I can, wherever it's, I would say, not confidential or proprietary information.
One quick question, and you can choose to not answer it if you don't want to.
Of course. Yeah.
Meet the People is the world's first people-centric agency group. You're talking about to ending politically motivated promotions and glass ceilings and bringing
Yes.
commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion. Too much technology marrying too many people?
So here's the trick. The problem with large companies is that they strive on hierarchy, right? You go to a company with 10,000 employees, you probably have 3 to 4 levels of hierarchy before you actually touch someone who produces something. So it's one of the biggest problems. And that creates political environments where it's not about the product or the service anymore. It's all about the promotion, right? So when I was always an entrepreneur, besides 3 years when I came to New York, where I worked in Interpublic Group of companies, IPG, one of the biggest holding companies in the world, now merging with Omnicom. And my boss at the time, God bless him, he told me, Tim, you're reporting to me now. I'm your boss, but I don't have time for you. I spend 20% of my time with my underlings. I spend 80% of my time managing up. I'm like, okay, that's a clear answer. And that's where I realized that's an environment I never want to create. The trick how I try to battle this environment, because it comes with scale, because scale means you need to apply control. We keep every company at a decent size, meaning that's why in my group, I have 9 companies. End of this month, I'm going to have 10 companies because we're buying another one. And these companies go from 20 people to 150 people. Very controllable. So really, there's only 2 layers. There's people on top who manage, who have the responsibility of the business, and then the next layer, all touching the product and the client and the services. And this is how you avoid those political gaming. And I really dislike it as an entrepreneur. And I try to keep this structure, this multi-brand, multi-entity structure as long as humanly possible, even though everybody in my leadership organization owns a piece of the group, not of the individual business. It's super important. And there we try to strip away as many incentives to look at your own little slice of the cake versus the overall cake, right? To disincentive people on being political and just looking at what's in it for them and trying to look at what's in it for all of them. Of course, I'm in America, and as a non-American, I realized very quickly that it is all about capitalism over here, right? So we do have to incentivize people monetarily to collaborate, but less so than the large companies that we are trying to battle. Yeah.
Good. That was a good answer. And that's the end of my questions. Except that I'd like your insights on where you see advertising heading over the next 2 years. 5 years is a very long time to see into the future. We don't know if we'll be there.
Yeah.
2 years maximum, given the technology, given the completely different way of thinking that the coming generations have. Also given the fact that Gen Alpha is going to be taking over in the next 5 or 10 years, and they will look at things completely differently. I mean, I'm not even talking about how we look at it. From Gen X, from Gen Z, they will be so different. What do you see happening? I mean, is it all going to fall apart, or is it going to fall apart and be constructed in a completely new way?
Look at me sitting here being super relaxed. Why? Because 60, 70 years ago, TV advertising was introduced to the world.
Yeah.
And it was, everything changed, right?
Yeah.
You know the famous song that a video killed the radio stars, right? So all of this changed multiple times. Like TV advertising changed the dependency on print advertising. And everybody was like, we're all going to die. No, It just evolved. It's an organism. Every industry is an organism, and every industry leaves players behind and going to
Yes.
promote players up. Recently, I was in Rochester, New York for a meeting, and there is the Kodak headquarters there. Kodak doesn't exist anymore. The headquarters are still standing because Kodak was left behind at the time because of political motivations of leadership. They
That's
had
a
the
case
technology,
study.
but they
Case study
fought
in
the
how to build a
technology.
company.
They didn't want to give up control, right?
Yeah.
So Kodak died as a company, but
Yeah.
many others thrived. So it's an evolution. You have to stay
Yeah.
on the ball. Advertising is always going to be there, no matter how much AI we have, no matter if there's Google, no matter if there's TikTok. It's always going to be there. It's just going to be different. And I can only encourage people, don't give up on an industry. If you really have a passion for it, just be smart enough to evolve with the industry. And generations are always have left behind. They've always been left behind by how technology evolved industries. So I'm not fearful of where the advertising industry is going, as long as we stay on the ball and we adjust our business models. It's fine. For me, it's an opportunity because there is behemoths in the market with hundreds of thousands of employees who are not listening, who do not adopt AI, really adopt it, who do not really listen to what clients want, who keep people in silos, trapped with their golden handcuffs. Like, it's just not the future. The future is way more collaborative. It's way closer to clients. It's not one model. It's multiple individual models with clients. So I think if we are flexible enough, it's pretty beautiful out there. If we are not flexible and we're stubborn, then it's not going to be beautiful.
Correct. As with everything in life. All
It's true,
kinds
right?
of absolutely.
And we have to listen to our kids and the young people, and we have to listen to
Absolutely.
them because they know what their generation wants.
They
And
absolutely.
probably
And so
eventually
much
they
better.
just have to take over, and we have to let them take over.
Yes, I think that's the best thing to do in everything. I mean, work, life,
Correct.
everything.
Correct.
So that's the end of it. Thank you so much, Tim, for your time. I really hope I can speak to you again sometime. There are so many things more that I wanted to speak to you beyond the questions that I had for you.
Sure.
I'll keep in touch with your PR team and let's see if we can do it again.
Thank you
Right?
so much. I really value your time. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the open conversation.
Thank you so much for being with us. Please do follow us on social media for regular updates and new content.